From the poll standpoint, a little bit. I'm not moving South Dakota State off of the one line. I don't know what I'm doing after that. There's a team that's in the background on my shirt that I had at 7.
Welcome to the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation with your hosts Kylor Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Jamie Williams.
FCS Fans Nation, the trio, back with you, Jamie, Kylor, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us, FCS Fans Nation, wherever you're coming from, YouTube or Patreon. Happy to have you here after a crazy week one. Want to give a little bit of a shout out before we get it going tonight, guys. Thank you to the Rev for stepping in last week. Our incredible host last week, Jamie Williams, coming through the airwaves, scrolling banners, dropping videos, geez, taking my day job. And so thankful that we had the Rev. Very knowledgeable, great human, a trash talker, which is the reason we love him the most. But his sermon sounded beautiful on our show last week, and we are happy that you're joining us on the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Kylor Neal, your Eagles getting the victory. One of the few teams that did, that is seeing somewhat of top 25 love. How are you doing this evening as we get things rolling into week 2?
Oh, I'm good. We got to win. Jamie, you guys got to win, right?
If you call it, I mean, we had more points. We didn't look very good for a while.
So my question is this the first time we've ever been on a podcast where maybe both of our teams won and Matthew Frazee's out there sitting crying? I mean, that's what I love to see. I'm sure it's happened at least once before, but it's been rare.
I mean, It depends on whether Eastern Washington's won on like one of the last 4 marker days, because chances are we won. So it's about you.
Yeah. Well, shut the hell up.
What did I do to you guys?
You know what? You're still in the Fun Belt piece of shit conference.
Oh man,
love you.
You guys are getting us worse than Dom Izzo, our local reporter here. He goes, NDSU has lost back-to-back games for the first time since October 2009.
Dude, hang up the gloves.
Really, Dom? Really?
Yeah.
Come on.
That program needs to go away. It seems like you guys are, you can't recover from that.
Fold it. We're no Idaho. What is alive and well, though, guys, before we get things going, is FCS Gold. We are up over 50 members that are enjoying their private pages. The Pick'em Challenge, which Kylor Neal has just kicked off. Our winner will receive a $50 Visa gift card. Having a lot of fun with that FCS Gold, and our listeners right now who aren't on YouTube, we appreciate you, of course. They're using Patreon to listen to this ad-free. So you can join FCS Gold for 99 cents. It's on the YouTube link below or on the Facebook or Twitter post for this podcast. But enough with the shameless plugs. These are the episodes, guys, that I get really excited about because we're going to go hypothetical with results. We're going to make assumptions because of results. And I love that because it's unlike Kylor's thing, which is basically that facts don't care about your feelings and these are the facts. There's a lot of things that happen, but it might not mean something. And that exactly is what we're looking at as we're going to roll into the top 6 topics of the week.
What are FCS fans talking and posting about nonstop? It's time for the top 6 topics of the week.
Gentlemen, for my little introduction there, what I was talking about is it seems like we have a lot of 0-1 teams after week 1, or 1-1 teams that should be number 1, should drop in the polls, should rise in the polls. I don't know. And Michael and Nicholas, Michael Otamendi and Nicholas Deal, 2 amazing fans of ours, one of them from the Gold page, they asked these following questions. They are wondering right here, though there weren't a ton of FCS over FBS upsets, there were a ton of one-score games. Do these showings like Abilene Christian and Idaho still help a team's resume? That's Michael. And Nicholas says, if you reward Idaho and NDSU for playing FBS teams tough, shouldn't you punish SDSU for losing big when it comes to the polls? This is why this episode is so much fun to me. I'm glad I have some experts here. And to Kylor, we'll give you the floor. What do you think about the results of this weekend, and does it affect resumes and polls?
Not really. It should. So, at the end of the day, there's very few hardcore FCS fans that actually vote in the national polls, the media. Most people don't know what's going on, which is pretty sad to say. At least we got, a couple great voters out there, like your Sam Herders, your Jamie Williams, your Zach McKinnells, Craig Herder. There's a lot of good people who actually follow the whole FCS landscape. But in the grand scheme of things, you're 0-1. I don't care how close you played, you're still 0-1. So it's not going to help you. Now, it may help an individual like me who watched a lot of these games and went, shit, Abilene Christian, you're on my radar. I was always talking about your offense the last few years, but it didn't seem like you had anything together. But man, that game was phenomenal to watch. And I love the gutsy, call at the end. I don't like the play call you guys did with your 2-point conversion, but I loved how gutsy you guys were. And that offense looks so good. So like in my personal poll, Abilene Christian is probably going to be sniffing the top 25 or potentially in my top 25. I haven't built it yet. That'll be tomorrow. But at the end of the day, a loss does not help your resume. It never will. But it shouldn't hurt your resume either. So that second question, that blowout loss, that should just hurt South Dakota State. I agree. That should hurt South Dakota State. They should need to hang up the gloves just like North Dakota State. They're 0-1. The season's done for these bum programs. We shouldn't even watch these games. The fan bases suck. The teams suck. They have no good players, no good quarterbacks. It is awful. No, that's stupid. You're supposed to get blown out by Oklahoma State, right? Oklahoma State is a top 15 team. And, there were signs of that game when you're watching it, that SDSU team can still run through a majority of the FCS. So why would you punish them? I also don't think you should overly reward teams in a point in close losses, because these FBS games versus FCS, I agree with what Sam Herder said a few weeks ago, or maybe even last week on Twitter, where he's like, we're really not going to learn anything, right? We've seen some bad FCS teams that don't even make the playoffs beat Power 5 teams like NAU beating Arizona, right? Yeah, we've seen it all the time. JMU beating, a really good Virginia Tech. These things happen, but then it doesn't mean your resume is automatically better or now you're the favorite. Sometimes an FBS team just does not get up for you. Maybe they don't respect you. They don't know much about you. They just thought they can go in there and roll through you. And other times, maybe that FCS team is good, or maybe this was their Super Bowl and they just played so much better than what they typically will the rest of the season. So it's week 1. We didn't really learn anything week 1 about anyone. That's just the reality of it. Everyone sucks. Everyone's good. We'll see in a few weeks.
Jamie, you are one of the hardest, if not the hardest working voter out there. Do these games affect the polls at all for you? What you're going to submit is as official as it comes. So what do you think?
From the poll standpoint, a little bit. I'm not moving South Dakota State off of the one line. I don't know what I'm doing after that. There's a team that's in the background on my shirt that I had at 7. When you play a team expected to be in the college football playoff to one score for most of the game, you probably move up a little bit. So, but as far as the resume, from a win-loss, no. But the fact that if you have those of us who pay attention push teams up the poll a little bit, at the end of the day, the poll has a little bit of bearing on the committee now. So that's the only impact of the resume that you'll have. Your eye test and how we feel about the teams and what might happen a couple of weeks down the road, maybe that's where you see an impact. But the biggest adjustment and improvement or lack thereof you'll see is from game 1 to game 2. So let's see how a lot of these teams play next week. We're going to talk about a couple of games next week, so I'm not going to say any of them right now. But if you look across, like Kylor said, FCS teams get up for FBS teams all the time and then do nothing after that. But there were so many teams that I was impressed with. Lamar, that's one of the teams that we think is going to be a little bit better, and they took the potential favorite in the Sun Belt West down to the wire, 1-score game. Now, they had to score late, and they didn't get the ball back. The 7-point game. Central Arkansas, other than looking at the score, they won that damn game. The ref was wrong. Flat out wrong. I just do not
1,000%.
I do not know how you overturn that call and taken 5 minutes. If it takes you 5 minutes to look at a call and then come out with that call, you don't have conclusive evidence to say for sure that guy had control and a foot down. we can talk about that. I can talk
Las
about that.
Las Vegas made that call. I can't
Maybe.
explain it.
I
I
was
cannot
hot.
explain it. I
Yeah,
can't
it
explain
made no sense. So yeah, I mean, I think we learned a little bit, but not enough to really tell us anything past this week.
I think you really have to take pieces to these games and then maybe apply them to what you think could happen down the line. Because, like, when taking the NDSU standpoint, I wanted to see if Tim Polasak's impacts would see physical increased play on the defense and offensive lines. And I thought I saw that. I assumed our secondary would look pretty weak, and that's exactly what I saw. With South Dakota State, I was like, boy, they lost a lot of weapons. Their tight ends are super young. Are we going to see some of these emerging receivers? Wildy, I believe, is the last name. They're going to pop off the screen. And boy, did he, putting up 150 receiving yards and had a great long touchdown pass. I kind of look for pieces and see what it can apply. And then I also look at these teams and I just think about the top dogs. I used to think about James Madison, NDSU, of course. Now we all think about South Dakota State. I just think about like an Idaho, and man, are these defensive improvements something that could actually give South Dakota State a challenge? So I always like to look at pieces versus FBS opponents and apply them to the big dogs in the FCS and see if we could look at some serious contenders or not. And I think that kind of is maybe a good way to look at it. But I guess I don't want to get any more into my thoughts because the next questions are going to trail into it. But we will roll right into the next one from Mr. Alex Kenkel, amazing South Dakota State fan, and of course, FCS Gold member. He wants to know, bigger overreaction here. Montana's offense is bad again, or the Jacks D line is in trouble? Great question here. Jamie, what do you think? You're not shy about Montana. We are the famous podcast who called them the worst 3-0 team of all time and then had to eat crow as they ran to Frisco last year. What is the bigger overreaction between these two statements?
Well, first off, we didn't have to eat a single bit of crow because we also said they're the worst 3-0 team, but the potential is there for them to make a run and they got some improvements. And that happened, so we were right. So to break down these two, so Montana's offense bad or Jack's D-line in trouble. Montana, they got to figure out their quarterback. And in the second half, I think they did. Logan Fife is better than Kiali Aya. That's when that offense kind of took off. The overreaction is the Jack's D-line is in trouble. I don't know that it is. So they gave up 127 yards rushing yesterday, and that's 3.3 yards a carry. That's pretty damn good. I mean, 38 carries for South Dakota State. Had a little bit more trouble on the back end, the 267 yards pass and 3 touchdowns. And Ollie Gordon is going to be one of the top 10 to 15 guys for the Heisman. So it's a big overreaction to say that the Jacks D-line's in trouble to me. Because if you think about if you look back to last year, their front seven didn't get a lot of push. They didn't get a lot of sacks. They did it by playing their lanes, doing their job, and every man playing for the guy next to them and in front of them and behind them. And that was what they did yesterday. They didn't have enough because Oklahoma State is one of the top teams out there. They've got a great offense and a good enough defense. So I feel like that's a big overreaction to think that the Jacks D-line's in trouble. I think past this, I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of issues moving forward on the front with their front seven.
Kylor, do you feel like actually we might see some of these graduated players from SDSU having a little bit of impacts there, or are you concerned about Montana? Are we also going to be overly fair to Montana because of the fact that they figured out QB and offense last year and then went on a run? Or are we going to be a little more patient with them this season? Like, what are we looking at here?
I mean, both teams did lose, aspects of their roster, which brought them to the national title game. But it is pretty wild that someone is just saying, oh my God, maybe the Jacks D-line sucks because a top 20 FBS Power 4 team scored 44. Hey, Jamie, remember when JMU dominated everyone in the FCS, but they lost like 56-14 or something?
North Carolina, yeah.
North Carolina sucked. They weren't even a good team.
They had
at the end of the day. Huh?
That's the year they had Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, they still sucked, right? Trubisky sucks. Everyone sucks in North Carolina.
Trubisky held them back, to be honest.
He held them back. But no, we didn't learn one thing about the Jacks in this game, right? All we learned was, a top-tier FCS team had some ups and downs, had some decent quarters, some not so decent quarters versus a top 20 FBS team. And that's about all you can take away from that game. Now, Montana's offense, at the end of the day, they are doing a brand new quarterback. I think I don't quite agree with Jamie. I think in this game, of course, once Fife came in, it was a completely different ball game. But sometimes you just need to make a change. Maybe, that one player, it was his first real game starting. I think he played a couple last year or he came in Ayat. But I mean, there was glimpses of him that looked great. Then there were glimpses of him that looked like what a sophomore quarterback is going to look like, right? He overthrew the ball a few times, but he can scramble. He can throw. There was a couple pretty good passes that Ayat had where I think he's got potential, but he's young. He's going to make mistakes. It's the first game of the year. Their offense sucked last year. I wasn't expecting their offense to be this magnificent changing offense this year. I know some dude on the page was calling me out because he said it's the most talented offense in the FCS. And I said, no, it's not. And then he got a whole tiff about it. But their offense sucks. I mean, it is what it is. It's going to keep improving every single week. This is week 1. They got to win. That's all that really counts at the end of the day. Their defense was a little more concerning in that first half than maybe even their offense, in my opinion. There were some big plays that were broken up.
Yeah, well, for the regards to their offense, I mean, Junior Bergen didn't play.
That's what I was going to say.
No Junior Bergen.
They're a best player. They're really talented, best player, one of the best in all the FCS.
Yep.
And again, you got a young quarterback who I think has potential, but he didn't play the best. Again, it's week 1. I think we can't overreact on a lot of things. This is week 1. Hopefully it isn't this rapid change like it was last year where they got decent all of a sudden, because I don't want to see that. My personal bias. So I hope they maintain a really shitty offense. But this 29 points is better than what they did last year in the beginning of the season versus worse teams, in my opinion. So if you're a Montana fan, cool. You got the win. You got challenged. You got challenged in a lot of games last year, and you still made it to the national title game. So just be happy.
And honestly, like we're dogging on SDSU, NDSU, these teams that lost FBS. The Grizz here beat an FBS team by 5 points, and everybody's freaking out. That's an FBS win, right? Isn't that how we can? Oh wait, no, we gotta wait a season. Do we have to wait?
100%. No, that's the mighty. That's a mighty Conference USA team. I mean,
mighty
in the grand scheme of things. That's a top 2 conference in the FBS.
I hope 5% of people in the Montana tailgates just heard that one portion of like this episode cut out on them, and then they spread that word. They're like, "Did you know we beat Missouri State and they're FBS?" Like, come on.
Oh, they already all know that.
They already know. Yep, smart fan base, good people, especially from what we experienced last year in Frisco.
Yeah, they're
very
good
great
people.
Speaking of good people, the Rev, and of course our guy John Lavezza. John, we're going to get this by the end of the year, I swear. They have a great question here, which brings us into one of our conferences, which could be a toss-up here for conference championship. But because of the competitive FBS games, are Central Arkansas and Abilene Christian underrated and conference championship contenders, says John. And the Rev, of course, throws in here, does the performance of ACU and UCA change your prediction of who wins the UAC? Now, Jamie, I feel like I got to start with you here because you kind of had this all broken down as your top 100 plus rankings. Does this change any of your thoughts for what is sure to be an auto bid situation of this conference?
Not really. No, I mean, I don't think anything's underrated about Central Arkansas. If anything, they've been overrated just based off of talent versus results. Maybe they're getting the results versus the talent, but at the same time, if you look at that game, they had it won. And they sat back and let Jalen Rayner walk down the field. Controversial call at the end completely, but don't put yourself in that position, period. Because you ruined an absolutely masterful performance by the most talented running back in the FCS, Shunderick Powell. The dude had a monster game. Let's see. I have it over here, I think. He had 176 yards rushing, 50 yards receiving. Oh, and by the way, a trickeration play. He had a 29-yard pass. There he is right there. To me, he's the best back in the FCS. 11.7 yards a carry. That's absurd. That is absurd. Like,
that's dumb.
Like, he is so good. Like, so Central Arkansas should be the favorite there. Let's see if they can execute and get it. Now, as far as Abilene Christian, I mean, Maverick McIver had a game of his life, and it was phenomenal. It was great to
It balled
watch.
out.
I love that they went for it at the end. I'm yelling, go for two, go for two. The execution on the play sucked. Texas Tech read it, double teamed the guy that he wanted to go to, and then he didn't really have a second option if anything happened, and he wound up trying to scramble and ran right into a tackle. So I hated that because they deserved a better fate. But, you know, I had them as a middling team in that conference. I still think they might be because they still don't really have much on the defensive side. They've got good weapons on offense. But again, it's 1 week. Teams get up for that FBS opponent. So let's not turn this into overreaction Sunday. It doesn't really change my perception on much about the UAC. I still don't think Tarleton's going to win like everybody else does anyway. So that's where I'll stand still.
Your Tarleton take is really that's cool. You're going to stand on that hill, and it's going to be interesting because people are just giving them so much love.
Oh, I'll die on the hill, and I might die, but I might be standing there planting the flag.
I'm really excited to see how all of this plays out. Any changes in the wins for you for this conference, Kylor? Or you kind of feel where Jamie's coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't have a lot of opinion on this conference in terms of who is going to win. Of course, I do think Central Arkansas was a heavy favorite, right? And they do have the talent to just blow this conference away. But I think this conference is a little more open than maybe some have realized. I mean, Abilene Christian's offense looks fun. West Georgia, I mean, that was a hell of a first game, right? Welcome to Division I. SoCon sucks, right? But I mean, this is a really fun conference. It's not any quarterfinal or above team, in my opinion. I still don't think it's there. But I mean, you have a lot of teams who can make noise and win this conference. It is probably the most balanced conference from top to bottom until you hit about Utah Tech, Northern Alabama. Other than that, I mean, the rest of the teams have a shot to win this conference. So probably not West Georgia. I think they made a splash, but they'll probably be towards the bottom. Tarleton, Abilene Christian, Austin P, Central Arkansas, EKU. Now they looked horrible, but again, FBS team, who cares? Southern Utah, I know Jamie's really high on them still. So you have a lot of teams that can make a splash. I would say until they lose, we probably have to put the favor on Central Arkansas, and they did look really good in this game. They had it, and man, those white jerseys are sick. They are the best white and purple team in all of Division I.
Yeah, purple and gold teams though they can't hang.
Oh, my bad. I was waiting.
You tried really hard.
Thrash me. I was waiting for you to thrash me.
All of D1 across the board. It's gonna be fun to see how this conference plays out, guys, and a conference that gets a lot of love from us, not from FCS Radio and some of these other places. We are always saying how great the SoCon is. We're the #1 SoCon promoters podcast in the history of all FCS podcasts and radio shows. So no, Kevin, I kid. But here we go. We got a great question from Mr. Eddie Poot, who loves posting on our page. We appreciate you, Eddie. How would you rank the SoCon after the Furman, Chattanooga, and Western Carolina games? I am curious on the SoCon here, Kylor, because I was doing a little research on this, just looking back in the last few years. Even last year, SoCon ends up with 3 playoffs teams, and the dreaded CAA, who guys like Kevin just can't stand for many reasons, ends up with 4 teams. Mm-hmm. Is the SoCon gonna flip and finally be that Power 3, a term that people love? Is that finally going to happen here, or how do you feel about it after the results this week and the season moving forward?
It is not going to happen with the teams that are currently in there. It's just not. I think there's still a very big gap between number 2 and number 3 in terms of the conferences. I think the gap is tremendously big. Now, if you go 3, 4, 5, I think those conferences are all pretty similar. I mean, I don't think we learned a lot from Chattanooga to getting dominated by Tennessee. I don't think we learned a lot, again, from Furman getting dominated by, would they play Ole Miss? 76, 72 to 0. I mean, that 76. Happens. 76, okay. That just happens. Now, one thing I think we did learn, and Jamie's been high on him, I've been high on him, Mr. Cole Gonzalez himself with Western Carolina, that offense looks like that could be a nightmare matchup for the rest of the SoCon. If they get rolling, I mean, they could be an easy front runner for the SoCon title. But I mean, there's a lot of really good balanced teams here that, could potentially make a run to a second round and then get upset in the quarterfinals. I still think Mercer's okay. I think Chattanooga has potential. I think Furman is solid in terms of what they're going to do against FCS SoCon competition. I like Western Carolina. The Citadel finally has a win, so congrats. But again, I think all of them are, Furman, Chattanooga, Mercer, Western Carolina. Those are your top dogs right now. Then I think there's a pretty big gap after that. But we'll have to see. Again, it's week 1. There's way too much over analyzing, and it's hard because no one plays the same schedule week 1. So sure, maybe have Furman and Chattanooga playing a very similar schedule in week 1, and that's why they got blown out by 140 points together. But other than that, we're going to learn more as the season goes on. These teams are going to beat each other up. They've known each other for a very long time. They're going to beat each other up. There's going to be upsets. You're probably going to have the SoCon favorite drop to maybe a Wofford or a VMI somehow. And then, of course, it's going to shake things up. And then the SoCon will go from having 4 teams that are playoff eligible to about 2. That's just what we know from the SoCon.
So you're predicting a same old, even with the Citadel being the number 1 team right now on these standings. Number 1, Citadel.
History repeats itself, Matt.
All right, we're gonna find out. Jamie, you have been pounding the table, as is Kylor. Western Carolina, right? SoCon strength. It's going up. It's on the stocks are going high. What do you think? Anything from this week that makes you change your mind on them?
Very little. I mean, I had it Chattanooga, Furman, Western Carolina. I might flip the second and third right now. I'm still going to stand by Chattanooga as my favorite because Cole Gonzalez was solid, but he's going to be way better. He had a nice game. He's going to have great games. So they just ran out of gas like a lot of FCS teams do against FBS. I've been pounding the table with Western Carolina for 3 years, and they would have made the tournament last year if they hadn't gone up and lost to VMI when Cole got hurt. So, I'm expecting Western Carolina to make the playoffs this year. I think all 3 of those teams are potential playoff teams, and we'll see who jumps. And then you've got Samford, who I had 4th or 5th. Now I have them falling way down. They lost to West Georgia, which is a good transitioning team, but that can't happen.
Crazy. Well, we'll see if the SoCon strength continues to increase or if it kind of just stays exactly where Kylor is seeing it. So, Mr. Eric Kletke, the man, Montana State fan, FCS Gold member. Eric says, which team were you most impressed by and which team were you most disappointed by? This one's great because it gives you guys an opportunity to take the whole thing in of these FCS versus FBS games or kind of the big early FCS matchups. I'd love to hear thoughts from you guys on like Villanova and Youngstown. I think there's a lot of takeaway there. Jamie, we'll kick with you. What are you most impressed by and disappointed by this early in the season?
I mean, to me, the most impressed by is easy. It's Idaho playing Oregon to a score for most of the game. There's quite a few others. Central Arkansas, Abilene Christian, teams that we've talked about already. There's a lot that impressed me. I mean, I'm impressed by Lamar, hanging with Texas State. As for what disappointed me, I don't necessarily think I could come up with anybody who really disappointed me. It was just what I expected. There was a bunch of FCS, FBS games, and maybe I expected a bigger win from Montana. I don't know. There's really nothing where I was like, man, I'm really frustrated by that. I mean, maybe earlier today, Alabama State, that's the team everybody's talking up, and then they went and lost. But the MEAC's better than the SWAC anyway, so I'm not super shocked, I guess. I hate to cop out on that answer, but I can't really think of anybody that disappointed me.
Not disappointed in anyone across the board. Kylor, what do you think?
For teams that impress, I mean,
there's a lot of everybody, like
100%. I'm glad you pointed it out. No, I mean, in terms of teams that, disappointed me, I don't know. Probably Upper Iowa. I was pretty upset that they didn't even play a competitive ball game versus Butler. So that one kind of sucked. Again, there's not really anything I took away. I mean, maybe St. Thomas, but again, that's not even an upset because they lost to a team that has more scholarships. So it is what it is. The teams that impressed me, yeah, Idaho impressed me. Idaho State actually impressed me, going toe-to-toe with Oregon State for a half. I mean, that was pretty impressive. Watching Cal Poly lose was hilarious because they shuck. North Dakota State was impressive. I mean, they had that game. We saw a lot of impressive performances and then a lot of just expected performances. Now, there's a little more zeros on the board than I would have liked to see from some of these FCS versus FBS teams, right? Like, Southern Utah, hopefully they could have scored at least one, but Utah is a good program, right? But there was a lot of just fat zeros on the board where that's a little disappointing. I get you're supposed to get blown out, but at least put up 3 points, at least put up 7 points. I mean, that's probably my biggest takeaway from this week. He got blown out. Cool. You were supposed to get blown out in a lot of these teams, but to put up 0, ouch. I don't know if that's ever happened to one of our teams when we've played. I'm sure it has. Ugh, that's rough.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you, Kylor. I was looking across the scores, and some of them I'm just like, jeepers, like you didn't even sniff.
Not even garbage time?
Like,
not even in garbage time?
Against the fourth stringers, whoever you're facing. I don't know what's happening to this podcast or this season. Maybe I need to shut the thing down. Because are we going on like a second week that I've been on here where I need to compliment the stupid team from Grand Forks? Is this really going to happen?
Don't do that. Iowa State is not. They can't play offense to save their life. They did what they were supposed to.
When did Iowa State turn into Iowa? By the way, fun fact, this is an FBS podcast, but Iowa had 3 wide receivers catch touchdowns yesterday, and that is the same amount as what they had last year. That is the craziest stat I've ever heard in my entire life. But hey, the Fighting Hawks, I don't know how they did it. They only lost by, they're on the road. They're never good when they're on the road. I was just mind blown that they pulled this stuff off. So I will give them props. They played pretty darn well. The rest of it, and I'm surprised, actually. I'm a little disappointed on how close a lot of these teams were, and they just couldn't get it done. I'm amazed at how things went just as they were expected to go if you're an FBS fan. Like, there was very little crazy drama upset. What did we get? Who got it? Like, what am I missing?
Yeah, I actually just did come up with something I was disappointed by as far as a team, and it's SEMO. They're up 16-15, I think it was, 4th and 1 from like their own 30, and they went for it. And you knew what play was coming, and they didn't get it. So I was disappointed that whole cycle. And all of a sudden, guess what? New Mexico State gets their 30-yard scores, and they lose. Punt the ball away with a few minutes left, and trust the defense has been playing well all night. That was a scalp that was there for him. I think that now that I think about it, that's probably the most disappointing thing.
It was right there for the taking. Yeah. Not our Taco Bet over under for 9.5 wins isn't. I went over and it's not looking good.
Can we all agree that it's disappointing that Stephen F. Austin plays North American? This is like the second team that they should not even get on the board to schedule. I mean, what, they win 100 points to 0 last year or 2 years ago against some other bum, and now they're 70 to 0 at halftime.
And they play 2 5-minute quarters to end the game. Like, that's not like.
So we need I get like some Power 5 teams, they're looking at these scores, and it's probably the same reaction. Why the hell are we scheduling some of these FCS teams? But we should not be scheduling any of these teams. I don't care if it's a last-minute replacement, if you left and you just want an easy win. There's D2 teams to at least go after. There's Pioneer League teams to at least go after. I mean, North American, that's a rough one. That's a rough one. And I mean, sure, you win 77-0 and you scored 70 at half, and that's fun, I guess, for some of the alumni. Come on, man. This is not Madden playing on rookie mode. That's a little ridiculous.
Come on, Rev.
Bishop Sycamore-esque.
This is 100%. North American has been Bishop Sycamore for the last few years. They've played multiple FCS teams. I mean, more power to them. They're just trying to stack their pockets, I guess, with a few bucks, but it's not like we pay a lot of money. What did FCFA pay him? $80,000 to get murdered by 80 points? That is pathetic.
It's pretty rough.
I blame Rev. Rev is to blame.
I blame Rev too.
Rev is an impressive guy. And our last question from Mr. Joel Mayer, who reached out to us, DM'd us, a gold member, of course. Joel says he wants to know, we kind of tweaked this question a little bit, Joel. He wants to know the most impressive and least impressive individual performances by the FCS this weekend versus the FBS. Also, Joel, we kind of talked about the teams there on the last question. I know that was part of your question, but most impressive, least impressive individual performances by the FCS versus FBS. Jamie, who really stuck out for you as you're looking into Walter Payton voting and, you're the guy. What do you got?
Easily the most impressive is Maverick McIver of Abilene Christian. The dude threw for 500. I'm trying to find that exact number. 506 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was amazing. He did everything possible for his team to win that game until that last play, and it just didn't work out for him. He was awesome. He was so good. And I'll tie that with another UAC player, Shunderick Powell. Already talked about his stats from yesterday. Those are the two most impressive to me. They were phenomenal. I've been a Shunderick Powell fan for a while, so I was really happy to see that. As far as least impressive, I know he scored a touchdown. But Land Larson was just okay. 3.5 yards a carry is just not going to get it done. I thought that he could have had a little bit better game for UC Davis against Cal there. So I hate to call anybody out. I'm not trying to do that, but I expect a little bit more for him. A little underwhelming.
Good selections there. I'm going to give it to Cam Miller. I'm going bias.
That's okay.
You look.
That's okay. He was great.
He looked amazing. And you know what else looked amazing, even better than Cam Miller, is the offensive coordinator with Tim Polasek, who's an offensive mind. Here you go, Brabbits. Those passing concepts finally felt like what South Dakota State does. It felt like good motion, slant routes, open receivers. I was really impressed by that. Not impressed by the whole Cole Payton comes in and runs up the gut stuff. Keep your running backs on the field. Keep your best player, Cam Miller, on the field. That's a different topic. Cam Miller looked really, really good. And just wanted to give him a shout out. And as a Bison fan, it felt good. And hopefully we can see him have continued success this season. Kylor, I'm guessing
who's your least impressive, buddy?
The entire Bison secondary. I don't know where they are. They were playing NFL draft picks, number 1 guys. Yeah, different topic. What do you got, Kylor?
No, you 100% stole my most impressive. Cam Miller. I was actually going to give some props. I mean, he only missed 4 balls. And anytime they're, Colorado's defense locked in on the wide receivers, he had this nice little scramble. He kept the drive alive so many times. He played such a smart football game. I mean, he's still, for being one of the most hated Bison ever from his own fan base, I mean, he is one of the better quarterbacks you guys have had. I mean, again, you guys have only had great quarterbacks, so it is what it is. But Cam Miller, he's good. He's smart. He's athletic. He makes the good decisions. He makes the right decisions. And if he can do that versus Colorado, I mean, he's going to torch a lot of people this year. He just makes a lot of good, smart decisions. And it's kind of sad that we don't trust him as much when the game's on the line and you got to make any type of, split decision. If your coaching staff go, oh, we need to take Cam out. I don't think he's going to be able to win us this game. He's the reason why you were even competitive in that game. So you got to give Cam Miller a lot of props. He was the full offense of that North Dakota State Bison team.
I think it's just the difference between Entz and Polasek. Entz always had the reins on him, wouldn't let him open up. And with Polasek, and I know it's one game, we're trying not to overreact, but Polasek let him play. Let him be the player that he is. And he looked a lot more relaxed. He looked looser. He looked composed. He was on time with the throws. I mean, he said, Kylor, he missed 4. So it could just be a difference in coaching and confidence and all that. So arrow way up on Cam Miller.
And then least impressive. Oof, this one was rough. Richie Munoz from Weber State playing now UW, right? They're historically a really good defensive program, but that team lost everyone. So at least if you think maybe you could put up a few points, then sure, it'd be against week 1 against this brand new UW coaching staff, brand new UW offense, brand new UW defense, everyone. And the fact that you went 11 for 32 with like 3 yards average passing, 30% completion, no touchdowns. I mean, watching him throw was rough. I mean, I get it. UW is a powerful team. You're not supposed to get competitive with that. The defense from Weber held their own. You got to give them props for holding UW to 35 points. That was impressive. But I mean, the quarterback looks rough. And I get he's a sophomore. I get, he played only half a season last year. But there are some games where you're like, all right, maybe this kid has something to him. Watching this, you just think this is another year where Weber State does not have a good offense and they do not have a good leader behind the center. And I think they're going to be in a rude awakening in conference play because they just don't have an offense. Their defenses will be fantastic. Their special teams can do some things. Maybe their run game can get it started. But I mean, that was a rough performance from Weber State in terms of just the quarterback play in general.
Well, the best thing about the season right now is that it's young and that these least impressive or most impressives have a chance to prove us wrong or right on both sides of the field. So, and in terms of being right or wrong, there is one way to know in life and on this podcast and across the entire universe whether you are right or wrong, and it's whether you can nail a taco bet.
Taco King, coming to you from bright and sunny Fargo, North Dakota. It's time for a taco bet. And time for you losers to pay up.
Well, we'll see if we'll be paying up for you, Brian, because tonight's Thompson's Taco Bet, and I even spelled your name wrong, we'll say accidentally, and I'm just going to leave it. Thompson's Taco Bet here on the screen. Okay, guys, the Citadel didn't have a win last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. Winless, no wins. Goes in and gets a W this weekend. Congratulations, Citadel, Military Academy. Shout out to Kevin. Now, here's the taco bet. How many wins will the Citadel have in 2024? I set this as an over-under of 4.5 wins. They currently have 1, so they need 4 more. And when you look on their schedule, here we go. Versus North Greenville, at VMI, versus Samford, who did not look good, and at Wofford. I identified those 4 games as like, okay, there's no way the Citadel is like going to get annihilated or beat bad by any means by those 4 teams, if you ask me personally. And they could pull an upset elsewhere. So what do you think, Jamie Williams, for Kevin's team, the Citadel, over under 4.5, and why?
I'm going to go under right at 4. I mean, North Greenville better be a win. There's 2. They're better than VMI. That's 3. And then they'll probably beat somebody else, but I think that's about it. I'm going to go under, take 4. But I mean, that's 4 more wins than they had last year. A lot of teams, if they had 4 more wins than last year, I'd be pretty damn excited about it.
That would be an improvement times 4. Kylor, what do you think? Over or under here?
This is a good one because, I mean, you could see them maybe upsetting someone. You could also see them maybe losing to North Greenville. So, I mean, this is one of those where I think I'm still going to have to play the under. Sorry, Kevin. I hope they do excel. I don't think anyone really hates the Citadel. There's not much to hate about them. They're a cool military school. They're strict. It's a beautiful stadium. They got cool colors, baby blues. They shoot cannons. What's not to love? But I think maybe we're jumping the gun because they played a Big South OVC conjoined team who's dog shit anyway. So it is what it is. You won 1 game, already be proud. That's more than you did all of last year. And if you get to 5, 6, 7, that's fantastic. We'll be supporting you. We'll be the first ones probably to congratulate Kevin. But as of right now, I just don't see it. I am going with the under.
Going with the under. I, of course, am going to take the over. A man of positivity. And Kevin, when you give me the hug in Frisco, you can just remember this moment that I had the faith in the Citadel. Throwing the on there.
The Citadel. That's what I call it.
Yeah. Those are important factors when you're talking about college football teams. All right, gentlemen, let's move into some quick hits.
Just because your question is answered quickly doesn't mean we don't care. It's time for this week's quick hit questions.
Oh boy, got some good ones on here. Very excited for this quick hit segment. I think your guys are going to enjoy what we have. And we're going to start with Mr. Patrick Firks. Oh, man, Eagles Power Hour coming through. Patrick, he wants to know, what are the must-watch games in Week 2? So what are we looking forward to as an absolute must watch when we come here to week 2. Some of these powerhouses, South Dakota State, North Dakota States, some of the big ones, they kind of tone it down with their opponents coming up next week. Jamie, who's on your radar, my man?
Montana against North Dakota. I want to see how that comes out. It could have a big bearing on the national picture at the end of the year. Could be a very good resume builder for whoever wins that game. And I want to see, what does Incarnate Word have? They're going to Brookings.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. And remember, it was like our first podcast. I said, what happens if UND wins that game? We were talking about fringe playoff teams. Could that be the thing that springs them in? How much does it affect Montana? So UND at home is a different beast in comparison to other schools. So kind of fun. Should be a fun one to watch. Kylor, Alex Kenkel wants to know, does Tommy Mellott play a full season? It's an old talking point, but he had to be helped off the field again last night. Sounds like the injury was pretty minor, but the way they play, the strategy behind it, what do you feel about Tommy Mellott in Montana State? 2-0 right now.
Yeah, luckily it was just cramps. And in the early part of this year, it is hot out there. You're probably going to get some cramps every now and then. It just happens. So luckily it was not any type of serious injury. The bad news is, they use him so much. Right. And he's a tough kid. You got to give him a lot of props. He's a tough kid. He takes some big hits, but that doesn't favor you, especially in an extra week this year. Right. There's a whole extra game, a whole extra week. I would assume, and I don't want to wish this upon anyone, especially he seems like a good kid. I don't think he's going to play every single game this year. It's just because of how that offense runs, how he runs specifically. He takes hits. He's a physical dude. When he wants to get that ball and he doesn't see an open 50-50 wide receiver down the field, he's like, I'm just going to run it for 7 yards and take whatever linebacker hit you can give me. And it's a little bit tough to manage the whole season that way.
Yep. Learn to slide for sure. And we're in no world hoping for an injury for the young man.
But he's fun to watch. He's fun to watch.
Even in Frisco in 2021, though, that stupid turf and everything got the best of him with an injury. So hopefully best health and wishes, but we'll see how the offense affects him. Jamie Chase Beckvar wants to know, can you go into deep detail on the rules of a catch, mainly talking about the needs for completion of a catch throughout the ground, or what, in y'all's opinion, indisputable video evidence means? Chase wants to know about that damn Central Arkansas game and why. Yeah, what's a catch, Jamie? What is it?
I tell you what, if I knew what a catch was, it wasn't what Des Bryant did, because that wasn't a catch. Shoot, that's not what we're talking about. I don't know.
I was having a good day.
I don't know what a catch is. I really don't. The one last night, the guy the ball, he has his hand down, the ball's still moving this way, all the way across his shoulder as he goes to the ground. I'm pretty sure the ball contacts the ground. There are about 3 or 4 different points that to me was incomplete. And 5 minutes later, they decided it's a touchdown. I don't know what a catch is, because that wasn't one to me, but that's what they said it was. Who knows?
Yeah, that was. I'm going to be over that. I'll be over that one the day I get over the Game of Thrones ending. So I doubt it'll ever happen.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Kylor knows. All right. Will the MEAC win the Celebration Bowl? The Rev coming through here. He wants to know. Back in the day, you would have said that Florida A&M has a chance there in the MEAC, but they are the SWAC, of course, now as of 2021, and they were last year's Celebration Bowl champs. You were kind of talking about this on your ranking show initially in terms of who you thought could take it. Jamie, what do you think? Can the MEAC be the team that wins it? Could we see North Carolina Central, South Carolina State? What do we got?
Certainly. Both teams look pretty good. I know Florida A&M did beat South Carolina State, but I think there's probably 6 or 7 teams between the two conferences that can win it, and the MEAC's got a couple of them. I definitely can see it happening.
And you just need one game. Doesn't matter if Deion Sanders brings in an undefeated team. The other side just needs to win one game. So Kylor kind of answered this one, but Patrick asks again, give me an offense and defensive MVP of the week 1 in the FCS. What do you have for an offensive MVP?
I'm not going to go the UCA route. I'm going to go super biased because he murdered everyone. But Efton Chisholm looked pretty freaking dominant.
Chisholm.
He dominated, especially I think he had like 170-something yards, 3 touchdowns, but it was like 100 and something yards after the catch. And he didn't have a lot of open space. He was shifty. He was hitting people. It was pretty impressive to watch how shifty he is. He looks like he's a nightmare matchup for a lot of teams. He only looks like he's improving. So I'm going to go a little biased on that because best wide receiver performance of the week by far, and I don't think second place was very close. Now, of course, Powell, you can use him as a co because he dominated and he deserves all the love as well. For defense, I'm going to go with X Little Child, right? I wanted to give it to all of the defense from Idaho because it was pretty impressive. But Jackson Eck, I think that was his name, leading the team for tackles. So you got to give it to Mr. Eck, Mr. Eck's family, the whole defense, the little kid as well. I mean, he had, 12 tackles?
He didn't get the Robbie Hawk treatment, did he?
Sorry, what was that?
Did he get the Robbie Hawk treatment?
Nah, maybe. I don't think so. X seems like a little bit better guy. But no, I mean, really, honestly, just that whole Idaho defense. Holding Oregon, who is supposed to be touted as his top 4 offense in the FBS, holding them to only 28 points is pretty damn impressive. I mean, that's a hell of a defensive performance from every single player on that roster.
Yeah, really, it was fun to watch. I was watching with my family. We were cheering them on. Came up a little bit short, but boy, lots of promise coming from Idaho. They say no moral victories, but kind of a moral victory. Yeah. All right, guys, here we go. The Rev wants to know, does Incarnate Word have a shot against South Dakota State? Our boys, Andrew, Markham, Zach, Carlson, Neil. What do you think, Kylor? Those birds got a chance up there?
So, obviously, we saw South Dakota State get murdered by Oklahoma State. I mean, everyone should be so worried. No, if you watch this Incarnate Word team last night, I mean, good news is they were playing Northern Colorado, and the second half was completely different than the first half. But Jesus Christ, Incarnate Word's offense doesn't look great. They figured some things out, but it is versus one of the worst teams in all of the nation, including Division II. I truly believe that. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of hope for the Birdies over there in San Antonio. I hope Mr. Markham wins. I hope those dudes win because I'm not going to root for a dynasty, but I don't think this is going to be the most beautiful looking game after the scoreboard shows what the final score is.
It's going to be, we'll see how the Rabbits look comparison to those Birds. All right, this is a great question. What do you guys think? Was the Robert Morris interception against Utah State one of the greatest ever? If you're watching on YouTube right now or watching ad-free through Patreon, since the video is now posted on there, you will be able to check it out. What do you think, Jamie, Kylor? Is this the greatest interception that we have ever seen in the history of humanity? It's pretty darn impressive.
I mean, for me, especially since I don't think I can't recall any other one-handed interceptions that have taken place.
Wow.
So, but yeah, I mean, that was.
First of all, he went up in the air. He did a.
Yeah, we're gonna watch it one more time. Just take this in terms of
the best thing is. I was on some SEC page this morning, and they had like this same interception, but not as good.
He went up in the air.
Same one-handed turning 360, and they're like, "This is the greatest SEC interception that's happened, the greatest NCAA one interception of all time." And then you have this kid from Robert Morris just do it at an even better level. He got higher up there.
He went up in the air. He did a.
This was insane.
Unbelievable.
Insane. I could watch that all day. That thing is. That's impressive. That alone should get him drafted. Holy shit, the athleticism.
Absolutely. Speaking of getting drafted, lots of Oregon players will be drafted, and that's who Idaho played, of course. They're our backdrop tonight on YouTube and on Patreon. Many Idaho fans asked our boy Chris Hammond, who then he asked us, would Idaho winning have been the greatest FCS over FBS upset of all time? It's funny you say that, Chris. I'll let Jamie go, then Kylor. I said to my family, I'm like, if they win, this is the greatest upset of all time. Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been. It wouldn't have been as memorable as the big house with App State. It could have rivaled at JMU Tech because Oregon could wind up doing some great things. But yeah, it would have been definitely up there. And by the way, Robert Morris head coach Bernard Clark, because I got to plug us when I can. He was our DE coach when I was a freshman and sophomore.
Nice.
Oh, heck yeah. That's awesome. Biggest upset of all time? Kylor, I'm going to give you this one too on the quick hits. If it had happened.
This is the biggest 14-point loss of all time. Good job, dummies. Why is this question even there? Screw you, Chris. Screw you, Idaho. You lost. That's what you guys should be worried about. You lost. No, yeah, it could have been, right? I mean, the number 3 team in the nation, and it was poised for them to be, playoff, run. A lot of people had them as one of the favorites to win a national title. So yeah, on paper, this could have been by far the greatest upset in the history. But I also don't like to say the beginning of the year proves that a team's good. When Montana beat UW, that UW team sucked. I mean, they were shitty. It is what it is. But yeah, it would have been the greatest on paper in terms of rankings. But at the end of the day, you lost by 14. So we'll see. You're going to lose to probably Portland State now too, you bums.
yeah. Don't lose to Portland State after that showing. That would be.
I don't even know if they play them this year. Who knows?
Just be embarrassing. All right, guys. Last one here. Joe Gass, our Delaware fan, still supporting FCS Gold. Joe, love you. Appreciate you. Last one here. The quick hits for the quick question list. Why did you pick your schools? I grew up in Newark, and in-state tuition at Delaware was too hard to pass up. We typically have got this question about like fanhood. I think he's talking college. We're talking edumacation. Okay. Jamie, James Madison graduate. Why'd you pick JMU?
Well, I applied to 2 schools only, JMU and the one on 81 that's down south a little further that wears an ugly maroon. Got into both, so was going to visit both schools. Plan was JMU on Saturday and the other school on a Sunday. Went on Saturday and we never went to the other school. It was just the campus and the vibe I felt. And then this thing in the back of my head, because obviously I had to have a football program. A couple of years before that, I remember seeing the coolest onside kick ever, and it was done by JMU. The kicker ran up and fell, but he fell on purpose, and everybody just stopped. The next guy kicked it, and they recovered the onside kick, and I thought that was super cool. It stuck in my head, and that was one of the things that put JMU in my mind, and it was the damn best decision I ever made.
That's awesome. So sports actually, had some impacts there in terms of your decision making. Very cool. Kylor Neal, I've seen pictures of you shirtless at the Red in semifinal cold games. What did you choose your university for?
So, I mean, I think some of you guys have heard the story. I didn't actually know Eastern was a college growing up in the state of Washington, because on the west side of the state, you don't really hear about them, or at least you didn't when there wasn't televised games. And, I didn't know the FCS was really a thing. I'm going to be very honest with that. I thought it was just Division II. So my junior year, my girlfriend at the time had a sister who was a cheerleader for Eastern. She said, "Hey, we're going to the football game. You want to go?" I was like, "Sure. I guess I'll check it out." And then I toured the campus. I liked it. Half of my family grew up in Spokane, so I would go to Spokane every summer. And I actually really like the Spokane area coming from the Seattle side. And then, I only applied to Central and Eastern because I wanted a cheaper university, and I also wanted to be hours away from home, because I don't agree with anyone who stays close to your home. I think that's a dumb decision. Go experience life. Go be away. If you love your family, that's awesome, but love them from a distance sometimes for a couple of years. So you can survive. But yeah, I ended up choosing Eastern because at least it was close to a city. I like Spokane. I like the campus. And it's a cool little town, and it's a real college town. So I know it gets shit on all the time because people are like, there's nothing there. Yeah, it's literally just the college and a few bars and a few restaurants. And
a water tower. There's a
water tower.
And a beautiful water tower.
It's a cool place to go to college because you literally know everyone. I mean,
Harrisonburg and Cheney are very...
You know all the bartenders. You know everyone. So it is kind of fun to do when you're going to pick a college town. And
Harrisonburg and Cheney are very similar in that way, where it's it's the college, and that's kind of what brings people there. Both really cool towns, and I can say it because I've been to both. Really enjoyed the visit up there. So yeah, I definitely see why you picked it.
And it was Division I. Once I found out it was actually Division I and not Division II like Central, I was like, if I can go for the same price as a Division II school and actually play Division I sports, I'm going to go to that college.
And you now do the same job and make the same money as Colin Cowherd doing a podcast. Like
100%,
exactly the same
exact thing.
Across the board. That's cool.
Hates everybody like Colin too.
Yeah.
Nah, he loves too many people. That guy's a bum.
Well, I'm the military thing. So, I did the Marine Corps out of high school, and I did those for that shuffle for 4 years.
Wow.
I went to Minnesota State Community and Technical College, and I got my criminal justice degree and did the police academy. So I got my associates there after the Marines. And then I was never going back to school. And now there's these things called, I guess you call them degree mills. But I got my bachelor's last year in December from American Public University. That's a real thing. It sounds like North American.
That's who
I was going to say they just lost to SFA.
They just lost to SFA. So, no, I've got 9 years left active duty, and then I'll be done with the military shuffle. But my degree is not from anywhere prestigious or anything like that. But I will say this. Education for me has always been, I'm the kid who I stared out the window. I never paid attention. I barely got the C's. So I consider deployment, Marine Corps, boot camp, all these things. I really do consider my criminal justice associates and my degree mill bachelor's as top 3 accomplishments in my life, because it's something I never thought I would be capable of. So I'm proud of the route I took and happy I got it. Was just raised a Bison fan in Fargo. So yeah, gentlemen, that does take us to the end of the podcast. Lots of hypotheticals for this one, lots of unknowns, and we just appreciate everybody for tuning in and enjoying this podcast every single week. We do have Labor Day. That's when this thing will be posted right away on Monday. We've heard a lot of people in our time doing this podcast. When we go down to Frisco, when we're at these games of our own, when we're in our own communities talking to people, I hear a lot of this, like, oh, I drive truck. I'm a salesman. I'm on the road. Hey, sometimes when I'm just at my cubicle at my desk, like, I'll listen to you guys. That's pretty cool. So I wanted to, with Labor Day coming up here, if all the other BS and craziness and psycho things in the world, if you just plug us in at your day job, we just appreciate you. And thanking you guys for putting your boots up and working hard and supporting your families. That's just a really cool thing. Thanks for helping our dream come true of doing this fun little side thing that some of you guys find entertaining. So if you want to join us in a more elite level, you can always join FCS Gold. Again, the link is in the description on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So, Jamie, any final thoughts before we roll out of here going into a fun week 2?
Got off and running. We didn't learn a whole lot. Hopefully this week we'll learn a little bit more, and we'll go from there. It's going to be good times.
Absolutely. Kylor, do we have any plans on September 3rd in terms of like purchasing anything that's important or anything that FCS fans should know about?
Never. No one should ever go online on the 3rd. What is it? The pre-sale for the tickets to Frisco, Texas. So everyone, go buy your tickets. Now, if you don't get the luxury of buying your tickets on the 3rd, buy them for $400 more 2 months down the road from now. I think that's always a good idea as well.
Yeah, just get down to Frisco somehow. We look forward to taking that question on December 3rd in the second round. Do you think tickets shouldn't go on sale until after the semis? I look forward to that question. It's coming. And the answer is no. So
no, just go. Stop being a bum. It's a fun experience. If your team is not there, luckily I've got to see my team. James got to see his team. Matt's, he's seen his team so much. But at the end of the day, if you're, the Rev will never see his team, and he's always there. So that's always pretty exciting. It's a fun experience. We've seen Wofford fans. We've seen just random fans. And it seems like every single year we're seeing more and more fans that have no affiliation with the game. So it's a beautiful thing. They do such a good job at Toyota Stadium. The Frisco town is phenomenal. I hate every single year. Should we move this game? We really shouldn't. They do such a good job at the stadium's beautiful. You guys all need to screw off with your soccer stadium talk. That thing is gorgeous stadium. The atmosphere is fantastic. Sure, sometimes it gets cold, but if the game was like last year, that was a beautiful day. Sometimes it can be perfecto. It's in the middle of the country for the most part. But yeah, I mean, everyone just buy your tickets and hope your team makes it. If they don't, oh well, at least you'll go watch a good game, fun experience, have a lot of beer with a lot of other FCS fans.
Heck yeah, you'll see us down there in Rainbow Row. We'll have our tickets purchased. We hope you do too. And we appreciate you guys working hard and tuning in to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. So thank you for listening. We'll see you soon. Buy your tickets and we'll tiptoe hidey-ho on down to Frisco. Catch you on the next one. Boom! Thank you for listening to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe on YouTube. To listen ad-free and enjoy many other perks, Join FCS Gold for only 99 cents a month by using the link in the description below. Make sure to follow FCS Fans Nation on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for listening to the premier podcast for FCS football. It's hard to do the pop thing now because the Shure mic is like so direct. Like you have to be here. Otherwise it's like that.
Oh, yeah.
You got to get that can right up on that butt.